Everything you're about to hear is for education and entertainment purposes only. Whilst we are licensed, we're not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Any advice is general advice. Equity Mates operates under Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.
Equity Mates!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Life throws many moments at you, some real triumphs, some awkward mishaps, and some real lows. In this Real Talk series brought to you by Guzman y Gomez, we're going deep on some of the highs and lows of our investing journey. Welcome to Equity Mates Investing Podcast. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. I am very excited for this episode, this Real Talk series where we're sharing some of the stories and some of the lessons we've learned behind our investing journeys, behind our portfolios, and today behind the story of Equity Mates. It's been great to pause and reflect and talk about the journey that has been and that is only just getting started in some ways. But today, the story behind Equity Mates. And people who have been on the journey have witnessed a lot of this story. So we don't want to retread old ground. But I think the way we want to talk about it is really the business and entrepreneurial lessons we've learned growing this business, raising money. We want to share with people who are building their own business or who have dreams of one day starting something for themselves.
Or who just love getting some of the nitty-gritty that we haven't shared before.
Some of the inside story, the gory details.
That's it. It's the unfiltered story of how this all got started. So brought to you by Guzman y Gomez. Well, we should start at the beginning, Ren. Early days, 2017 is where it all kicked off.
I would say the story actually starts before then because the first episode came out 30th of January 2017, but the conversation around we should do something started earlier. I mean, we could go back and talk about some of our failed business ideas before then.
Let's not worry about that.
Let's start with the Equity Mates journey. And so we were enjoying investing. We were talking about investing. We were listening to podcasts and reading stuff from people overseas, but there wasn't a lot for Australians, made by Australians, talking about Australian stocks.
No.
And so we wanted to do something, and I suggested, let's write. Let's do a blog, have a website where we learn in public and write about the stocks that we're buying.
Yeah. And I hate writing. So I was like, there's no chance we're doing that. And at the time, podcasts were a medium that we were both listening to.
Yeah. They were nascent,
I was
though.
big Tim Ferriss at the time.
I'd never got into
big Tim Ferriss guy.
Yeah.
And we were both inspired by TIP, the Investors Podcast. We Study Billionaires is what it's called. Still out there today.
It's a confusing name. I think it's called the Investors Podcast. That's what
TIP.
That's what you would search in your podcast.
Yeah,
app.
Then
it was We Study Billionaires.
Yeah. Which was awesome. Preston and Stig from memory. And really inspiring investing content, interviewing some of the best in the business. And that was something that we were listening to, but to your point, nothing really spoke to us as individuals, as Australians, as beginners.
Yeah. And so you suggested let's do a podcast, and that was really where Equity Mates was born. For me, just even at the start of this story, there's a pretty clear lesson that emerges. We weren't thinking about it at the time, but in hindsight, it was pretty clear, which is jump early onto new and emerging platforms. There's no way if we started today, we could build the podcast business we did.
No way.
The audio quality wasn't good enough. We weren't good enough. We didn't know how to edit. In 2017, the audience was forgiving because the medium was so new.
Yeah.
And we got better as the audience grew.
Yeah.
And so 2018, 2019, we were still figuring it out. We were still editing on Audacity, the free audio editing tool.
Yeah.
To be honest, I still edit headlines by Equity Mates on Audacity.
Yes, that's great.
That opportunity when there's green grass, blue sky, whatever it is, when it's less crowded and it's less sophisticated and polished, that's an opportunity.
I would add there, though, at that point in time, looking back as well, there was something naive or bullish about us that just made us start. I think the lesson of just doing it was something that I think a lot of people have ideas and want to throw things around, but just actually putting the microphone down and pressing record was is probably perhaps the biggest barrier that a lot of people face.
Yeah. And I think in the years since, we've seen another really good example of that, of people just starting and figuring it out and growing as the platform grows. And that's TikTok.
Absolutely.
And I kick myself because we have a decent following on TikTok, but like the opportunity was there. I was on TikTok in 2020. I was trying to do like one stock a day videos in the share house. They sucked. But I didn't stick with it in the way that we stuck with podcasting.
Yeah.
It's been the same. The people that were on TikTok at that time who stuck with it, committed to it, are now, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers. And
that's not to say that we're in a worse off position.
No. This isn't about us. This is about the lesson, which is that these opportunities pop up every now and then. Threads. Yeah, Threads.
Vine.
Not so
what
much.
was that? 30 seconds. Was it Vine?
Vine was
Be Real.
Oh, yeah, okay. But it's not just social media because like podcasting was different. Like podcasting isn't social media per se, but it was just like this opportunity where there was like a new medium or a new mode of mass communication that gives you an opportunity to build an audience really quickly. Yeah. And that's going to happen again. And who knows what it will be, but I guarantee you there will be another opportunity where there's fertile ground to
I would say if you're serious about starting business, if you don't have your head in the AI space in some way, shape or form at the moment, you should start playing around with it.
Yeah. So that's number one. So jump early onto new and emerging platforms and technology. That was something that was good for us in those early days. Thank God we didn't do a blog or a website because they haven't really gone from strength to strength. Although who knows, like Substack's done all right, but...
Yeah, no, I think we chose I think it was the right thing to do, yeah.
So, all right, so let's talk about those early days, 2017 to 2019. That's probably like chapter one of the Equity Mate story.
So you and I both held down corporate jobs.
Yeah.
We did all of this in our spare time. We did this on weekends. I remember sometimes finishing work and thinking, oh my God, we've got to do a podcast. Like there were real moments of, fatigue from, we worked. You were in the office 7:30 to 7:30. I probably was in the office 8 to 8. Holding down a corporate job and then doing this on the side, like there were moments where we didn't throw the towel in, but it was a slog.
Yeah.
Especially when the audience growth wasn't there that matched the input that we were putting in, but we were just scratching our own ear. Yeah,
we were learning. We kind of thought the payoff would be learning about investing and becoming better investors. But yeah, there was no ad revenue in the first year and majority of the second year as well.
I would say first 2 years, I don't think there was ad revenue.
Back end of 2018, I think was that when we did that $500 giveaway?
I mean, that wasn't even ad revenue. We gave the money away.
Yeah, that's what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was a $500 prize from this super nice listener at the time.
No, it was Dave. Dave Roberts, wasn't it?
He funded us out of his own pocket. Yeah. Which was really nice. But yeah, I think early days, it was no sort of grand plan. We just wanted to learn. We were editing on the sides. We were recording. We were knocking on the doors of fund managers and interviewing them and all done sort of outside of corporate jobs. But I think looking back, that was a real blessing. And, being able to have someone else paying us like our corporate jobs and then having this on the side meant that we could make decisions that weren't commercially led.
Yeah. And I think we've seen a lot of people start businesses in the media space, but just more generally, people that we've sort of kept an eye on or spoken to or known who tried to go all in early.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain hustle culture, entrepreneurial view that you have to be all in from day one, burn the boats, don't have a plan B. You got to believe in this thing and put your whole self into it. But it just changes the commercial realities of the business. You need to start making money a lot quicker. You need to get traction a lot quicker, and you can't be patient.
Yeah.
And we had the luxury of being able to be patient because we had our bills covered by our 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And I think there's no way we would have succeeded if we were like, we're going to start a podcast and we've got 3 months of runway. Otherwise, we're going to need to quit because we can't cover our rent.
And the stresses that just would put on your life, like, having a conversation with your partner around, we're going to go all in and we're going to use our savings. And it's just those sorts of conversations we didn't have to have, we didn't have to worry about. And we're not saying that was the plan. Like, we didn't think that it would become what it is today. It was just that we were really loving it and fortunate that we were able to do it.
Yeah. But the lesson is hold on to your 9 to 5 for as long as possible.
Yes. So to sort of close out this chapter, 3 years, 2017 to 19. 2019, Ren, was when we really started to see audience growth.
Yeah.
Which was really pleasing. And we had the Facebook page up and running and started to sort of really engage with the Equity Mates community that we had built.
It was also when ad revenue started coming in, and that was when we first signed with ARN.
ARN,
yeah. So that was Corey back. He's still at ARN.
Yeah.
But for people who are unfamiliar with how the podcast industry works, all of us are basic, except if you're like Hamish and Andy or Shameless, we're all too small to go and speak to media buying agencies ourselves. Although we're starting to get there.
We're getting there.
So there's all the radio networks, and then Acast, who's a podcast specific one. Essentially, they represent podcasts. They're basically their agent, and they go and speak to media buying agencies and big brands and sell briefs. We had no idea how this whole industry worked. And so we signed with ARN back then. And that was when we first started to get small but regular income.
Yeah. It's those pre, mid, post roles that they help us sell. And I remember having...
First time we were called Sellouts, 2019.
Yeah. So that's it. But it came off the back of audience growth. And I think, we'd been growing. We were fortunate enough to cross paths with the Batuta Advocate guys.
Yeah.
And so we were recording in their studios. We didn't have studios at the time.
I think cross paths is generous. I think you sent them an email.
I reached out and said,
made them aware that we existed.
Can we come into your podcast network? Yeah, that's true. I emailed them and said, can we come into your podcast network? You got
to hustle. You're
right.
Yeah.
Hustled them. I knew they had a podcast network, so emailed them, and Anthony and Zanin and the guys were fortunate. Were nice enough to say let's meet. And
incredible!
They were early days, big inspiration for us.
Yeah, they let us use their studio when that was when we graduated from a microphone between the two of us. I think we each had a microphone at that stage, but just recording on a kitchen table to being in a studio.
Yeah, and the biggest growth driver from those conversations was around the formatting of the show. So we went 2 episodes a week, one of which was dedicated towards expert interviews because we'd noticed that a growth driver was any time we would interview someone with like a decent name or their own sort of audience, it led to growth.
Yeah.
And so that was
as long as they promoted it on their channel.
As long as they promoted it, yeah. I remember we got Alan Kohler early days.
Yeah.
A few other sort of bigger names. We had Wayne Swan at some point. And so this was a sort of a good growth strategy for us. Yeah. That's another lesson. Like figure out how you can tap into other networks, other audiences, and cross-pollinate.
Yeah. One thing that we haven't touched on, though, is the fact that you and I were actually living in different cities for this whole first chapter.
Yeah.
So I moved to Melbourne in So we met in Canberra, and you moved to Sydney in 2016, started 2016 for work at Woolies. I had an extra year at uni and then moved to Melbourne in 2017 to start work at Coles. So you were working at Woolies in Sydney, I was working at Coles in Melbourne. We just did this all by distance.
Yeah.
Like, the Alan Kohler interview, you flew down to Melbourne.
Yep.
For like our first interview with Andrew Brown, I flew up to Sydney.
Yep.
And it was a good way to keep in touch.
Yeah.
But I think there's no way I would have kept doing it without having you as a co-founder.
Hell no.
Sack the idea that like there's this glory or there's this idealistic solo entrepreneur.
No.
Like you need people around you. And like the co-founder relationship is so important. It doesn't need to be someone who you're seeing every day in person. Like we did it by distance.
Yeah. So we're going to touch on raising money a little bit later, but I remember clearly that was one piece of advice an investor gave us, which was that often investors look favorably on co-founder relationships.
Yeah.
Because there is a dynamic of a bit of safety in a way. It's like you're not going to just have a rogue founder, have no one, checking ideas or bouncing off them in a way. So, no way we couldn't have done it without each other.
Yeah. So I think that closes chapter 1.
Yes.
Chapter 2 then is the COVID part of the story, 2020 to 2021. And I think the chapter title here is Quitting Our Jobs and Raising Money. And so I was in Melbourne, you were in Sydney, but 2019 was when we started talking about is there enough here?
Yeah.
There's
something here.
I think to my credit, I probably pushed a bit harder in those years.
You were busting to quit.
I just had this view that the job would always be there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Job was always there. So you were busting to quit, and so you moved back to Sydney.
Yeah, moved back to Sydney end of 2019. But God, it was a slow walk.
Slowest walk I've ever seen.
I had started the quitting process in 2019. I had negotiated to 4 days a week rather than 5 days a week, so I could spend 1 day a week working on Equity Mates.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, this was in a pre-COVID era. Working from home wasn't
Not a thing.
First time I raised trying to work from home in 2018 or 2019, just like a day a week or something with my boss, he said no. And then I said, and then I think well, there was a bit further discussion, but then he was like, if you work from home, you have to answer my call on the first ring.
Boss calls you on first ring. Wow.
So like there was no working from home to do a bit on the side there. But yeah, negotiated down to 4 days a week, did that for a little while, and then was like, look, I'm moving back to Sydney regardless. I'd love to keep working, but moving back. Yeah. And so then we negotiated that I could work remotely from Sydney, but 1 week every month I would have to fly down on my own dime and stay in Melbourne and do a week in the office. And so then I was doing that, and that's when I moved back in 2019. But then COVID hit in 2020, and all of a sudden the idea of traveling was done. And so then I was just working remotely.
Yeah.
And then I never went back to the office.
Nice. Yeah, COVID was a real moment for us. COVID was a real moment. We started to accelerate our audience growth. You'd quit, and then everyone was forced at home, and it was a real. We had two massive tailwinds behind us. One, podcasting went crazy across the board.
Yeah.
And two, the rise of the retail investor at this point in time.
Yeah.
People were there were platforms that were out there that gave access to retail investors to parts of the market that you couldn't get access to before. Like Stake was when Stake launched around that time.
Superhero launched in 21.
Superhero launched, like
Sharesies came to Australia.
Yeah, so
like,
just
it was
this
a big time.
Yeah, proliferation of online investors, and the market was going nuts.
Yeah,
people were just pouring money into it, and it was just like a huge increase. And so people just started trying to find content to help them understand what was going on.
Yeah. So that was kind of the context. I'm not sure there's a business lesson in there. Capitalize on a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, right time, right place.
For me, I actually think I compare like what it was like working at Coles, where the market kind of grows at GDP.
Yeah.
And like your margins are pretty tight, and so like you're constantly looking to cut costs, and like if you can find a way to grow, that's great. But it's always fleeting. It was like do you remember the minis? The mini,
selling things,
the mini
the
plastic.
toys.
You're just doing anything you can to like eke out a couple more points of growth, and then we were sort of seeing this podcast industry just fly.
Yeah.
And the feeling of being in an industry where there's like real tailwinds.
Yeah.
It was nice.
It's exciting.
Obviously, you have to capitalize on those tailwinds, and you want to be growing faster than the market, winning market share, winning audience in our case, whatever it is. But first of all, find a business you believe in and you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Subpoint under that, if it can be in an industry where there's really nice tailwinds, go there.
I would say don't do a business that's in a declining industry.
Yeah. Unless you really believe that you can capture big market share. Yeah.
Good lesson. So the real inflection point came from one of our long-term backers and supporters, which was Matt Leibowitz from Stake.
Yeah.
He had been on our case for years saying, boys, you've got something here, just get in there and get it done. And if it weren't for his initial convertible note investment, we probably wouldn't be here today. So he gave us $100,000 and that allowed us to have a very short runway that gave us the confidence to quit our jobs.
It was basically like we could quit our jobs, capitalize on the growth and raise.
Yes, have some breathing room.
Yeah, and the convertible note would convert on the raise.
Yeah.
And so that was 2020. I'd obviously been seeding the ground with my parents around quitting my job. Like I'd moved back to Sydney. They knew something was up. But I think it was probably pretty shocking for them, for us to have had secure jobs and then to throw it away for a podcast.
Absolutely. My parents have always been great supporters of whatever I do. They've never told me to do anything specific, like be a doctor or whatever, or that's just such a cliche, but they were shocked. Mum was like, what do you mean you're going to give up annual leave? You're going to give up sick leave? You've got a corporate career, you're climbing the ladder, like all of those things. How are you going to get a house? All of that sort of jazz. Shocked. I mean, at the time explaining what we were doing was so foreign. Yeah. Like it was like I don't think they really understood what we were trying to do.
No, it's hard. it's hard to put ourselves back in that mindset around what we thought it could become. But we had felt that traction. We saw that there was something there.
Need, yeah.
And the revenue was growing slowly just from the dynamic ads. Well, like we weren't profitable. We were losing money.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just thought there was something there. I'm trying to reflect back on it.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It was just a feeling.
I think the lesson there for people as well, and this is only a lesson for some people, but if you're young and you've got an idea, like we were unencumbered. Like we had you were dating Ham, but
had no kids, no mortgage, no consumer
I was single. Debt. It was just like, it was the time to give something a crack.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we got the 100 grand from Matt, which was a bit of breathing room, which brings us to the process of raising money. I think a point that a lot of entrepreneurs and founders get to, and it is a minefield out there. There are a lot of ways that you can raise money.
Sure, there's a lot of ways you can raise money, but it's really hard to know any way to raise money for people who aren't growing up in those networks. You grew up in Wagga, I grew up in Sydney, but not in those networks.
Yeah.
It was like we had no idea where to start.
So our tactic was we'd interviewed a guy called Paul Wilson on the show before, and he was part of Bailador, which is still is. And so they are an investment house and invest in tech companies. So we thought, let's pull together a pitch deck and not go and ask Paul for money, but go and ask him for advice on the pitch deck. Let's take him through it and just get his 2 cents on what it was.
Hoping he would be like, boys, I love this pitch deck.
Exactly, hoping that he would be like, I am all in.
Spoiler alert, he wasn't all in.
No, but what eventuated from that was, hey guys, I have a network of people that I think I could introduce you to that I think might be interested in this idea. And so we didn't ask him for a cent, we just asked him for advice, and he was able to introduce us to a few people in his network.
That is the biggest learning about raising money. Everything in the VC space, but I think just generally runs on networks and warm introductions.
Big time.
The idea, like there are definitely people that raise money from cold emails, but that is the minority of cases. It's the way I think about it. It's like the thin edge of the wedge. Find some way that you can get in a network, meet someone, whatever it is, and then ask them who you should speak to and for the introduction.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
That's the secret sauce, yeah.
Yeah, which sucks because it relies on people having networks and being able to get into networks and stuff like that, and it entrenches a lot of issues with the ecosystem. But unfortunately, our lesson, we raised money in 21, we raised a little bit of money in 24 as well. We also tried to raise money in 23 for a project that didn't get off the ground. And my learning from all three of those instances is it's the network and the warm introduction that makes the difference.
Absolutely. We started chatting to people, started the pitch process, started refining the deck. We look back on the deck and there are some absolutely wild, crazy numbers in there that it was just nuts. And I think people at this stage in the business, people are just investing in you and I, Ren. They're not taking the pitch decks seriously at all, particularly with the podcast business. But what we found is once we started the investment or the pitch process, we started chatting to people who had also been on the show before. And that was a really powerful moment because we didn't have to do a lot of pitching to them because they had experienced the power of our audience by coming on the show. And what I mean by that, some of them were advisors, some of them were CEOs of publicly listed companies. And after coming on the show, they'd either had people reach out to them, they'd had people invest with them, and so really understood the power of what we were creating and that there was a need for financial education and so backed us in to grow it. So we ended up raising $1.2 million, which was a really exciting moment.
It was incredible, and it validated the decision to quit our jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It kind of then leads to chapter 3, which is about growing the team and the audience. But before then, let's take a quick break and say a massive thank you to Guzman y Gomez for sponsoring this series, helping us keep all of our content free.
All right, Ren. So throughout this series, you've been bringing me stats around the makeup of burritos around Australia. You can customize your burrito in any way, shape or form.
Yeah. Now,
what have you got today?
The mini burrito is quite popular.
Big time. I think underrated.
Well, you would go an extra large if you could.
No, extra chicken.
you would go 2 wraps.
The double wrap combo.
Yeah. My question today is, where is the mini most popular? Which state
the mini burrito.
Downsizes the most?
Which state downsizes the most would be Victoria.
Why do you think that?
I don't know.
No, that is not correct.
I don't know. Just feels like it cold and.
I'll give you a hint. The smallest state. Well,
Tassie.
Smallest territory.
Canberra.
Yeah. The ACT, 15.74% of burritos are mini burritos.
Well, if you haven't tried a mini burrito, I would definitely highly recommend it. I think for the right occasion, they're hard to beat.
I actually just think have a normal burrito.
No. Anyway, you can customize your burrito any way you like. Customization is the name of the game. And if you sign up to the Guzman y Gomez app and use their Gomex rewards points, you'll actually get a free burrito.
Love that. You can earn points on every order. You can skip the queue by ordering through the app, and you can actually get it delivered through the app. Eat your way. Keep it real. Eat a burrito.
Love that. All right, chapter 3 of growing of the story behind Equity Mates, and we're now moving to growing the team and growing the audience. We've raised some money. It is all about growth.
Yes, I think the first part of growth was growing the team. The first person we hired was Sasha.
Yes, our
producer. Still remember hiring her. It was in COVID.
Yeah.
It was all online.
Yeah.
She was down in Melbourne. We were a remote first business.
Yes.
And from there, we're now, 9 in the team?
Yep.
I think, in terms of business lessons from hiring?
Mine would be that, look, we knew what we wanted and needed to get off our plates to focus on other things. Like at that point, we were doing all the producing and the editing ourselves. So it was clear to sort of like, we needed to free up our time to record and to think about growth and whatnot. But honestly, for me, looking back, hiring right is really hard. I think it's one of the hardest parts of an early stage business because every single person you hire has such an impact on the business. And getting the seniority right, I think hiring, if I were to do it again, it's like hiring people that grow with the business, not hiring for people that where you want the business to be, if that makes sense. I think we hired great people, but it was probably too early in in hiring them too early. And what I mean by that is, heads of, for example, we probably didn't need heads of at that point in time.
Yeah.
We probably just needed people to really help us get to that point.
Yeah, do the stuff.
Yeah. And so, I would just, you hear it in business circles now, it's like hire slow, fire fast. I think that's something to really think about.
Yeah. So the first part of growth was growing the team. The second part was really growing content. And so this was really a big phase of launching new content initiatives for us. Starting with podcasts, we built out the production house. So the first podcast we launched, do you remember the sequencing?
Yeah, it was CVE.
No, it was Meet, Pay, Love, I think.
Oh, was it?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gee, so that is a throwback.
Meet, Pay, Love, if you haven't listened to it, done by Zoe and Carmel, all about the money side of relationships, the taboo topics that we're not talking about. Everything from who should pay on a first date to how much should you pay for a wedding and everything in between.
Good concept.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast was great as well. It's just like... it's the conversations are still taboo.
Absolutely, yeah.
We didn't solve that problem.
No.
And then, Save Comedian v Economist, as you said, Thomas and Adam, they were doing a show called Minimum Chips.
Yeah.
And then they came across and rebranded it. You're in Good Company, Maddie and Soph, Talk Money to Me with Candace and Felicity, Crypto Curious with the team from Bamboo, Hearts and Minds. I'm now sort of listing them all, so I need to make sure.
I think we grew a stable of podcasts.
Yeah. And you should listen to them all.
Because the thesis was use the audience that we have to grow a stable of podcasts so that we would have like an enduring podcast business that didn't rely on Rennes and I. That was the thesis. And that was a lot harder than we thought, to be honest. Like it's difficult to grow one audience, let alone a podcast business with 10 shows. You know, the shows were all awesome shows and did well in their sort of own right, but it didn't get to the scale that we really needed for you and I to genuinely be able to sort of take our foot off the main shows.
Yeah. We actually haven't started. We haven't spoken about Get Started Investing, but that was actually the first show that we launched.
Yeah.
The other show that we launched at that time was The Dive.
Yes.
Which won gold best business podcast at the Australian Podcast Awards, but unfortunately, we just didn't quite have the capacity to keep it going.
No.
But I dream one day of bringing it back.
Oh, it will be back.
Yeah.
Yes.
The books. So 2021, August 2021, we published our first book, Get Started Investing. And then August 2023, we published our second book, Don't Stress, Just Invest. Both bestsellers, Don't Stress, Just Invest, winner of Best Business Book of the Year 2024. Just a shameless plug to go and read them if you haven't. But probably the biggest project we did in that time was FinFest.
Yes. Now, if you hadn't been to FinFest, FinFest was, think of it as like an all-day food and wine festival, but it was, instead of food and wine stalls, it was experts talking about investing.
The impetus for this, for years, Bryce railed against 11 a.m. cucumber sandwiches. And literally that is your quote in like the ASX magazine at one point. We were interviewed. There's a lot of great investing events held. Unfortunately, a lot of them are held at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday in a hotel ballroom or conference center, not accessible for people who work 9 to 5 jobs. Optimized for people who are in the industry or retirees who are managing their self-managed super fund. And so we wanted to do something that brought all that great content to a place that was accessible, more on the level of us and the people in our audience. So there was food trucks and bars. There was a bucking bull.
There was a bucking bull, for the bull market. No, it was an awesome experience, a real lesson into what it takes to put on large-scale events. It was incredibly stressful. The purpose for us was to really show that Equity Mates can do something different and engage a younger audience in a way that the finance industry has never been able to do. And I think we ticked that box for sure.
So business lessons for entrepreneurs out there or people who want to be entrepreneurs. Number one, large events are really hard.
Yes.
Number two, there's no economies of scale in events. In fact, I would say there's diseconomies of scale. Things get more expensive as you get bigger. But it was epic. Like, you know, we had 1,700, 1,800 people come through the door. So it was a pretty great day. Just more generally, in terms of lessons for people at this time, anything else really stands out to you?
Yeah, I think focusing on the core of the business, like the whole point of this period was to grow. We'd been given an investment to grow our audience. And so there was a lot of spraying and praying going on. But I think looking back on that period, whenever we really focused just on one or two key growth channels or key audience channels, it grew. And so just being insanely focused on one or two things and not feeling like you need to do everything at once. I think we did have that feeling a lot of times, let's try and do everything at once, but just really focusing in on one or two things. And it did result in growth. I'm looking at the numbers now. We actually 10 times our audience between 2020 and 2024. Some significant growth there, which came from the new shows, the books, everything that you went through there.
So I think that's really the story up until this year, which leads to the fourth chapter, which we're still writing, which is the next era of Equity Mates, where we now have partnered with Betashares. They've agreed to acquire us, and we're going to really supercharge what we're doing. They're going to invest in the team, and we're going to double down. And we may have 10x'd our audience over the past 5 years. I guess we got to 10x it again.
Got to do it. That's it. Well, I think, we are incredibly passionate about the opportunity in front of us, which is to bring financial literacy to as many Australians as possible. That has been the mission sort of over the last 5 years or so. But now We are going to have more resources to be able to do that. And we've learned a lot of lessons over the past 8 years. And I think we're now in a position where when it comes to hiring new team, when it comes to thinking about new initiatives, we're going to make plenty more mistakes to come, but like we've got a great foundation now to take Equity Mates to the next level.
Yeah, I think for people who one day dream of exiting, like in terms of the lessons that we learned from that experience, you've got to find the right partner.
Yeah.
Like we've been approached over the years.
Multiple
We've
times.
been approached by Australian companies. There was one American company that approached us, and it's easy to get caught up in the idea of the next stage and what it might mean. But like the reason that the Betashares partnership was the right one is because like this is something that you put your blood, sweat and tears into. This is something that is so much a part of you. Like don't rush this process. Make sure it's the right partner.
I think the big unlock to that point as well is like they didn't want to change anything. They respected what we've built. They understood what we've built. They didn't want us to become anything other than continue doing what we're doing. Like we didn't need to sell the business, but this was an opportunity that was going to accelerate beyond what we would probably be able to do ourselves in the short term, which was what was really exciting about it.
So that's the 4 chapters so far of Equity Mates.
Yeah.
I think the story is still being written, and in our mind, it's only just getting started. But I guess we wanted to do in this episode is really draw out some of the lessons that we've learned along the way to, I guess, give you some of the real insights, the real talk of this journey. What I want people to leave with is the fact that anyone can start a business. Like we had no specialized knowledge or specialized training. Every step on this journey, we just fumbled our way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like all of
highs,
these
lows.
Yeah, raising money, quitting our jobs, trying to hire people, trying to launch new shows, trying to raise revenue, like trying to all of that stuff. We made so many mistakes. We made ourselves look like idiots at times. But that is this. I reckon if you spoke to most people who start a business, particularly in that early chapters of their business, just fumbling through. It's like that duck, looking calm on top. And
paddling like crazy underwater,
Get started, and when you do start your business, keep it real and eat a burrito.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.